If you want to be seen as a leader, it starts with how you run your meetings. I'm Kendall, that career coach, and I teach you how to navigate the secret unwritten rules of the career game in order to find success and progression. And ultimately, how you run your meetings will determine how you are perceived as a leader along the journey of your career growth. Oftentimes, I feel like this gets overlooked, and people think, well, it's just a meeting. I need XYZ answer. I'm just going to get all of these people on a call. I'm going to talk about this topic, and it's going to go fine. But the reality is that there are people who are very good at leading meetings who are then added to bigger meetings, meetings with more senior individuals, meetings where they have exposure and visibility. And then there are individuals who are very poor at running meetings who get stuck at the more junior levels of presentation because they aren't able to articulate themselves in a way that is perceived as leadership oriented. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, the difference between facilitating a meeting and dominating one. So when you set up a meeting, you are generally, especially in the more junior to middle management levels of seniority, covering a topic to which you have a lot of in-depth knowledge. And as you progress your career, you will be presenting to more and more people who do not have in-depth knowledge of your specific job for a myriad of reasons. And oftentimes what I see happen is we set up a meeting, we invite all the right stakeholders, and we facilitate. We say, hey, we're all here to answer this question. And then it's a free-for-all, and everybody's talking over each other. We don't get much progress. There's no clear takeaways. And all we did was bring people into a virtual or physical meeting room and pit them against one another, essentially. But dominating a meeting, effectively leading a meeting, showing up as a leader in a meeting requires a few things. First is pre-meeting prep. There is this unspoken assumption that everybody is just showing up to these meetings with no preparation. They don't know who's going to be in the meeting. They haven't read about what the meeting is. They haven't reviewed the agenda. And while that is true for some people, the most successful people do their research before the meeting starts. So we're talking today about how to lead a meeting, but quick bonus tip, if you are attending a meeting, you should take the 60 seconds before that meeting starts, at a minimum, 5 minutes if you can, depending on how your company culture is set up, to understand who's in that meeting, what do they care about, what are their highest priorities, and how does what you're trying to get at in this meeting fit into those different requirements. If you are not aware of who is there and what they care about, you're going to be unsuccessful. Full stop. Getting back to setting up your own meeting, one, you need to be clear on what kind of outcomes you're driving. The mistake that I see the most in meetings is we use it as an education opportunity. This meeting serves no purpose except for me to teach you stuff. Incorrect. If your meeting has no tangible outcome, no goal, no objective, it's unnecessary. If you just want to teach them, cool, send them an email. Let them look through it on their own. All right. You have to have a clear outcome of what you're trying to deliver. That outcome can be clarity for next steps. That outcome could be a decision, yes, no. That outcome can be deprioritization of something or reprioritization, but you have to have an outcome. Second thing is you have to know what each individual on the call is doing within their role. So sometimes we do have people on a call whose only role is awareness. We just need to make sure they know what the heck is going on. That's fine. There's always going to be those people. But you need to know who the decision makers are. You need to know who's responsible for the outcome. You need to know who you need buy-in from. You need to know who is going to have to advocate on your behalf. What role does each person in that meeting have for you in your project or your initiative? And the last thing is everything we're doing needs to be time bound. This is going to come more important when we talk a little bit about meeting minutes towards the end. But if you do not know what you're trying to do and when, why are you having a meeting? You're not prepared. You are not ready. You don't know what you're trying to do. Now, at the start of every meeting, I tee my meetings up the exact same way. And people who have worked for me or who have been my clients pick up on this over time, and it starts to almost become a running joke. I start every meeting with high-level context. Hey, the reason that we're here today is we're trying to answer X question. It always starts with a problem statement. That problem statement might be, hey, you asked me for something, you have a problem, and I am the problem statement, right? But you are answering some type of question with that meeting. When you set the context of the meeting in terms of a problem statement, you're making it very clear what outcome you're trying to drive within that call. See the connection, right? Then you're going to provide high-level context of what we're trying to accomplish. What does each person on the call responsible for? What goal are we trying to get to? What is any background information that individuals on the call may not have that they need in order to do what we need of them, right? This ties to that assigning roles. And then lastly, what are we working back from? What dates do we have time bound? Okay. If you tee your meeting up that way and you have an agenda, you are already 70% more successful in your meeting than everybody else, right? Then you have to manage engagement and participation. You have to call on people by name. You have to run interference if topics start to get sidelined. Hey, I understand that this is really critical. Maybe we schedule a separate meeting for that. In the preference of time today, I really need us focused here, right? You need to redirect. You need to be able to partner with people, and you need to make sure that everybody is engaged. Something that I will add to this that is kind of a bonus is I also think giving credit at this stage is really important. If there is somebody that we are trying to get a decision from and we worked with someone on their team to facilitate that conversation, or we got information from someone on our team, giving credit where credit is due is really critical to being perceived as a leader, because leaders are not cagey. They are not possessive. They don't keep their teams out of it, because a true leader is going to build up the people around them. Giving credit is a good thing. So you set the clear stage, you know who's doing what, you know what the outcomes are, you manage the energy and participation. Then we start to get to wrap up. We are going to wrap up with clear decisions and accountability. Hey, based on today's call, my understanding is this is what's going to happen next. Does everybody agree? And then we're going to send that in meeting minutes and an email. I don't know why meeting minutes get such hate. It is like a visceral reaction for 90% of the population. Like, oh, how dare you ask me to take the meeting minutes? Meeting minutes are critical. And I've talked about this on my podcast before. I had a manager once when I was going out on maternity leave tell me, oh no, what will we do when you're gone? No one will send meeting minutes, as a joke. And when I came back from my maternity leave 6 months later, the first words out of his mouth was, thank God you're back. I don't know how we did anything without your meeting minutes. Like, nobody has any idea what's going on. Yeah, it's important. Who agreed to do what? What is the timeline when we're going to close the loop on this? What is due by whom when? You need to be clear. This is good to protect yourself and CYA and make sure that you have documentation. It's also really important if you actually want to see progress in whatever outcome we were trying to drive during the meeting. All right. And you need to learn how to follow up quickly. If you cannot describe what you are trying to accomplish in 2 sentences or less, you do not know what you're doing. If you do not know how to follow up with someone in 2 sentences or less, you don't know what you're doing. Working on conciseness is key. Leaders don't want a lot of extra language. They don't want a lot of extra details. They don't want you to go off on a tangent about how this was really challenging because of XYZ reason. They just want to know what you need from them. So if you want to learn how to command a room, if you want to learn how to own your space, to have that leadership presence, you have to start with leading great meetings. You move from leading great meetings to having great relationships. But you need to lead great meetings if you want to be seen as a leader, as someone with executive presence, as someone with strong potential in the workplace. And if you're ready to take control of your career, go ahead, schedule a call with me. We can get started on a customized coaching plan to help you really start to progress your career. Otherwise, check back in for more tips like this.